Did you hear? Did we go through the netiquettes and were you able to hear part of that or no? This is the first time you're hearing my voice, right?
No, the netiquettes are done.
Okay, I did talk to the netiquettes. Okay, so this is about ethical dilemmas and much and more, and the more represents a lot more that Ali is going to talk about. And I would like to talk about Ali now. Ali is a new find, and I'm very thrilled to find him. He's of Pakistani basically, who has studied in London for his graduation. I think you did your graduation from University College London. Is that so?
Yeah, my PhD is from UCL, and bachelor's was from University of Warwick.
Oh, okay. Warwick, you are saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So despite, and since actually it's a very recent PhD, but I see your PhD is in artificial intelligence and education. And I think that's remarkable because I haven't seen that PhD very often in experts around the world. And it's a very recent one. You finished in December 2022. And yet I see you have lots of awards and publications and work experience under your belt, which shows that you have been very prolific in your work and outside activities since a younger age. I see that you have at least 7 publications, 6 to 7. You have awards from the University College Institute of Education, a research degree award, consultative committee member of the US Doctoral School, that's very prestigious, and a Global Advantage Gold Award. So, and you have had works experience of developing the course on AI and machine learning at the University of California, Berkeley. That must be exciting. How did you end up there in Berkeley?
Yeah, so it was basically for, it was a part of the executive education program. So they basically launched like AI and ML courses for like executives, like managers who want to upskill themselves and get a better understanding of how like AI algorithms work. So because I've been working as, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And you have also taught over there, I think.
Yeah, I'm currently teaching there, like part-time. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's what we call, being really true to learning and doing at the same time. And then there is this, which I can't make out, Kaggle, Google Public Data Explorer and Data Government. What's that? That's absolutely Latin to me.
Sorry, which is this? Which
you are Kaggle. Kaggle. What is Kaggle?
Yeah. So like it is basically a platform for like AI competitions. It's a very like popular platform where like different companies post their data challenges, and then like people kind of help complete them. And I've been like I've participated in some of those challenges and like contributed to some of them.
So we are struggling with using AI for our basic tasks, and you're way beyond trying to do much more. And I see that you're founder of an app, Voracious AI. Now you have to explain what that does.
Yeah, so I have like a slide on that. So it's basically a startup we are working on, like generative AI tools for researchers and for educators. So one of the products that we have built is ResearchPal, like which helps researchers in academic research and writing literature reviews, stuff like that. So yeah.
Wow. And is it going to be free or paid?
Yeah, so it has like a free version, like for researchers to try it out. And then like with our partner universities and organizations like who deploy them, like we have like much like discounted prices for them.
Okay, wow. So that's where the inequity will come in. But I guess we'll talk to it. And you have been a principal investigator of AI at UK Research and Innovation. You have been a postgraduate teaching associate at University College London. You are an lead, some holistic AI, and you're the lead scientist and data engineering team lead for that. You are an AI lead also in another academy, which is deep learning at NeuroMatch Academy, and artificial intelligence consultant at University College London's Knowledge Lab. So and research and AI mentor and educate, ventures, research. Do you know, reading your CV, I realized a lot of the places where you worked are all AI related, and they are tackling different types of AI with different goals and objectives. And frankly speaking, that boggles me because there's so much to AI that we don't know and what it can do. So, without further ado, I think I'll start on to some of the things that you're doing. But before that, I also want to a little bit. A lot of us, when AI came, even on our campus, when we did a survey, we realized that many people were kind of doubtful about AI and its use on campus. And uh, but luckily enough for us, though many didn't know what AI was, those who knew were actually very positive. And that showed that technology for us has become a way of life. And even if we don't know, we are aware at a certain level that technology will come with its own opportunities, but there's an opportunity, there's a cost over there, a cost and a challenge that's going to happen. And I think what probably you will talk about, your talk is about how some of those generic challenges are, and some, like we were just talking, and you said a lot of about AI is challenging because there are some generic technology challenges, and I don't want to go into them now because you will probably be talking. And then there is AI in education that carries its own bag of concerns. And so, to first to differentiate between the two also. And I think what is becoming even more difficult with AI is I see there's a website which says there's an AI for that. And every day they post, I think, closer to thousands of new apps that are coming up for everything under the sun. It's crazy. It's worse than a shopping mall. When you go to buy something, it's not just one shop, it's a whole mall of services, and you don't know what to do. So we have enough problem with technology as it is on a campus. We don't know if there are two things. Are we sort of doubling, overlapping the technology, and are some things redundant in some technology and we are still using it? So I see that as a major challenge, even as a user of AI, what to use, when to use, how to use, when it will become outdated, when will we come up with something new that we have to be aware about, and are we still living in the dark ages of AI and some. So that is just one thing that boggles me. And then of course everybody is talking about integrity issues, and I know there are many other issues, but I'm touching right now upon only integrity issue, and that's a big elephant in the room sort of a thing. So how are we going to manage that when the students are not regulated, the staff, the faculty, the leadership is not ready to understand the implications, the far-reaching implications of AI? So how do you make any regulation or guidelines? And many actually governments are taking this role of developing guidelines for use of AI so there are multiple levels, there were multiple types, there are multiple scenarios, and so it's quite mind-boggling. So I leave it to you to try to clarify the whole deal with us, and perhaps, you might confuse us more. So, with the knowledge that you have, and we are unable. So over to you, Ali. I think you are the co-host, and you can start your own slides.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Roxana, for the introduction. So let me just share my screen now.
Right now, we have 177 participants with us.
So yeah, so I believe you all can see my screen now. So
yeah.
The purpose of this talk is to create some awareness amongst educators, faculty members about how AI systems work, a high level introduction to how AI systems work, and how these workings relate to some inherent limitations that these systems have, and then why. And I'll also share some examples, like, you know, where AI systems have gone wrong in the real world, as well as in the educational contexts. And then, you know, like what we can do as educators, as faculty members, as leaders in our respective institutions to mitigate those like negative effects of AI, right? And throughout the session, like I will also give people like, you know, a chance to speak. Like I'll take some inputs from the audience as well. So like, you know, firstly, like briefly an agenda. So I'll just kind of, you know, like cover like what is AI. I'll give a high level overview of what an AI development pipeline looks like. So when an organization or an edtech company decides to build an AI powered tool, what are the different steps that they have to take, and what are the different stages that they have to go through in developing these AI tools. Then, you know, I'll present the case for ethical AI, why that is important, right? And then we will move into like the applications of AI in academia and research, right? And then, you know, we will address the elephant in the room, basically generative AI tools like ChatGPT. What limitations do these tools have, right? How do these limitations of these generative AI tools impact the academia, right? And I'll also share some examples over here, like, you know, where these tools have gone wrong in like education contexts and what kind of impact that had, right? Then, you know, like I'll also present like a brief plan for academics, like what we can do to address those limitations. And then I also have like, you know, a slide on ResearchPal, like which is an AI tool for researchers and academics that we have built. And like, you know, I'll also share like a slide on transparency index framework, like which is basically, which has been my research focus during my PhD. Right, so let's dive into it. Like, firstly, like what is artificial intelligence? I know like this is a very basic question, but the reason why I thought there is a need to actually kind of define it in the beginning of the session is because a lot of terms within like, you know, AI literature, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, are many times used interchangeably, right? So, but technically, definitions of these terms can kind of vary, right? And the reason for that is like, there is no universality in the definitions of these terms, right? For example, intelligence itself has been defined in 70 different ways in the neuroscience literature, right? So, like, in the context of this, like, you know, in the context of this session, we will define like artificial intelligence, which I think applies quite widely as well, as any computer system, you know, that can interact with the world, right? And reflect on the capabilities and abilities like which we would think are only like, you know, limited to humans. For example, these systems can generate content, right? They can generate text, they can generate voice, they can generate images, they can imagine, right? They can dream. So these kind of capabilities, which we thought were only unique to humans, but they are now being, you know, like portrayed by these machines, right? By these systems. So we will define that as, you know, like artificial intelligence system that can really like master a particular field and kind of, you know, like give us like relevant answers. Now, what does an AI development pipeline look like? You know, the first part of an AI development process is the data processing stage, where after an organization has defined a problem that they want to solve using AI, right? For example, in the educational context, you might want to kind of predict grades for your learners, right? Like how will this learner perform in the final term grades, right? You would first part would be start collecting the relevant data, start processing it, cleaning it, and getting it into the right shape and format, right? And then after you have cleaned the data and it is in good shape and format, you move on to the machine learning stage, right? Like, which is like, you know, you select a particular machine learning model. For example, you know, it can be a neural network, it can be a random forest algorithm, it can be a support vector machine, a linear regression, any machine learning model. You train that model with that data, right? And you get an output. This output can be a prediction, it can be some classification, like, you know, it might say that, you know, this particular learner will pass the exam, or it might say like this particular learner will get like 95% in the final year exam. So it will spit something out, right? And after you have kind of trained the model and, you know, like you're satisfied with it, then you would move on to the final bit, which is like the deployment of the AI system, right? And this is where the monitoring of the systems come into being, right? And like, you know, overall, this is kind of a snapshot, like, you know, what an AI system looks like, you know, what are the different steps that go into building an AI system. Right? This is like, you know, a very high level like presentation of this AI development pipeline. But like, you know, why do we need ethical AI for this? right? It seems like quite straightforward, right? There is like, no rocket science in this. So we can see clearly what are the steps that we need to take. But then why is like, ethical AI such a big deal, right? Why is like, these big organizations like OpenAI dedicating 20% of all their resources just on the alignment of AI systems that they are building? Right? Why is it that legends in the field like Geoffrey Hinton, Yoshua Bengio, Jan LeCun, like these pioneers in the field who played a very important role in like advancing this field of neural networks in 1990s and early 2000s? Why are they warning against like existential risks of AI? Right? The reason is that all these different stages like have their limitations, right? Data processing stage has its own like inherent limitations, right? To begin with, like when we collect the data to solve a particular problem from the real world, that data is a sample of what we think the real world to be, right? This data set will inherently have its limitations, right? It is not going to perfectly present the real world, right? And because of those limitations, they can then translate into the outputs that we get from the AI systems. Similarly, when we move on to the machine learning modeling stage, where we use complex algorithms like neural networks, which they are considered like a black box algorithm, right? We don't really know how these models work. We don't know why these models predict what they predict, right? Especially in the context of generative AI algorithms like ChatGPT, like which have like hundreds of billions of parameters, right, within the model. Researchers who have built these tools, they don't know why these models are producing the results they produce. That is why they have these inherent limitations, and this is what makes it really scary. This is what makes it really, really risky, right? And this is what the legends in the field, like Geoffrey Hinton and Jan LeCun, have been kind of warning about. And because we don't know why these systems produce the results they produce, we can't control them. When we can't control them, this means that we have to come up with mechanisms to somehow like mitigate these effects, right? And I'll go into like the details of this like later on as well. And finally, like once we have deployed the AI systems, it is very, very common that when you build an AI system in the lab, you train a machine learning, you collect the data set, you clean it, you train the model, you get some results, and you're very happy, like, I'm getting 95% accuracy with the machine learning models. But once you deploy them, there is a good chance that the performance of the model would deviate, right? It would give you some random results. And this term is called concept drift in machine learning language, right? So there's this uncertainty in the behavior when the models are deployed in real world, and this happens like very commonly as well. So like because of these limitations of the AI systems, we need ethical AI. We need this field of ethical AI to kind of spread awareness of what these systems are. And there's this very common kind of bias amongst like users of AI, which is called the technology bias. And this bias is that those people who are not very technical, right? Many of us, like educators, especially who belong to social sciences, who are not very technical, right? As teachers, students, parents, the users of AI, they tend to believe what AI says over what their own preferences are, right? This is called like technology bias. Like we prefer what AI is saying rather than what our own perceptions are, which is completely wrong. We need to kind of restore this confidence into humanity, right? Humans' preferences are always better than AI systems, right? And I think if there is like one takeaway that you should take like from this session, is that there is no perfect AI system in this world. There is no perfect data set in this world. Every AI system is going to have its limitations, right? It is going to have its drawbacks. So whenever you're using any AI tool, right, in any context, whenever your kids are using AI tools, your students are using AI tools, it is kind of our responsibility to spread awareness of what the limitations of these AI systems would be, right? They would work really well in certain contexts, right? For example, a machine learning model that is trained on the data using like high-end private schools in UK, that machine learning model cannot be used to make predictions about the students in Pakistan or India or in Asia, right? It won't perform very well. So and these limitations in these contexts need to be understood, by the community, by the users, so that they can utilize these tools in a productive manner, right? So and I'll share a couple of case studies of why we need ethical AI. Like first is some of you might have already heard about this. During COVID, UK government actually developed this algorithm to make predictions about students' grades, and this was A2 grades, like second year of A levels, right? Which is this is a very important year in a student's life, because the grades of this year actually determine which university you're going to go into, right? So you have conditional offers from the university, and based on the results you get, you go into a particular university. But because due to COVID, schools were closed, so the UK government developed an algorithm which would make predictions about students' grades based on certain data set, right? And based on this data set, they would determine which student would go into which university. The algorithm, machine learning algorithm, or the AI was actually making the predictions about students' grades. And it turns out now the government has all the resources in the world. They have access to the best talent in the world. They can collect all the data they need. So there's no constraint on the limitations, right? We can't say they didn't have enough time or they didn't have enough resources. But despite that, when they released the AI tool, right, there were protests all around the UK, from the educational community, from teachers, from parents, from schools, because the tool had some inherent limitations. It was biased against a certain group of people, right? And it was making predictions against certain schools, right? And I had a couple of pictures of of these protests, where this algorithm was kind of trying to make a prediction about learner. And in short, what the algorithm was doing was that if in a particular school in the past 3 years no learner has graded very highly in a particular subject, then that algorithm would not grade any learner from that school highly, right? Because the data set was actually structured in that manner. So there was this fundamental limitation in the data processing stage, which was used by the data scientists to develop this tool, right? And eventually the government had to kind of call it off, and they ended up using the predictions that were provided by the teachers for their students, right? So we went back to the teachers' predictions. Teachers play a very very fundamental role in this. So that's a classic example of AI being applied in education but not working, right? So we need to be careful, when we are building these AI systems, and when we decide to use these systems, in our institutions. Then there is another example of Dialectica, which was a large language model which was released by Meta. Has anyone heard about this? Did anyone hear about this? No. Okay.
Meta, I have heard about, but I do not know if it is the same Meta. It's the metaverse or what?
Yeah, it's the same Meta, Facebook, the parent company of Facebook. So
yeah,
they released this tool called Galactica, which was basically a large language model, and they released it after a couple of weeks of the release of ChatGPT. And the reason why no one has heard about this is because even though this was targeted at academics, it was specifically for researchers. The reason why no one has heard about this is because they had to call it off immediately after 3 days. And the reason was that this was just a chatbot similar to ChatGPT, and it generated whole papers, whole research papers. It would write the introduction for you, it would write the literature review for you, it would define the methodology, it would present the findings, it would do everything for you, right? I write the entire paper. And but then after 3 days, researchers started using it, it became very popular. I remember on Twitter, it was trending, and everyone was kind of using it and enjoying it. But then researchers started noticing that it was producing fake citations. It was allocating citations to researchers which didn't belong to them. It was producing fake names. It was changing researchers real names. And then they were, and it was hallucinating. It was producing content which was fake. It was just producing rubbish. So they had to kind of call it off immediately after 3 days, right? Which was a classic example of an organization, again with all the resources in the world, who released a particular tool, following the hype of ChatGPT, a very similar model. You could talk to it and you could ask it a question, and it will kind of generate a literature review for you and generate findings for you. But they had to kind of call it off. So another example of why the AI was released with all the resources in the real world, but was built using the best talent in the world, with all the resources, they have the most compute power to train some of the best and state of the art algorithms, but it did not work out, right? Education is a very difficult field to actually to break into, even for AI, right? So this is another example of AI being applied in the educational contexts and not working out, and actually having a devastating impact, right? It's good that they called it off, right? And after that, they haven't really produced anything like this. It has been almost 2 years now. They haven't really produced any algorithm like that, because they are still trying to address the limitations of the model that they released, right? Now, like, uses of AI in academia and research. So I want to kind of, like, ask you people if you think so I'll take, like, a few inputs from, like, from some of the people, like, what do you think are some of the uses of AI in academia and in research? Like, you can raise your hands and I'll give you a chance to speak. Any particular way you're already using AI? How do you think AI is being applied in the educational context right now? Yes, Habib University, Karachi. I can't see your name. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Nuruddin, Habib University. Yeah. I don't think we'll be able to unmute them because I think we have done the mass mute. Gohar, can you see? If we could have done a poll on this, which could have been done on the screen.
If you raise hand, I can unmute them.
Please do. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we have this hand from Wasim Manwar.
Hello, Ali, and hello, everyone. So I think what I have seen students and faculty members, not mostly students, not faculty members, that they are using it as an assistant, right? AI is an assistant where they are asking different questions, for formulating different prompts, and then using those for responding to their queries or questions related to the assignments, for example. So it's more of a teaching assistant or a person assistant.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. So it is basically helping them, like, in their education, like in their research workflows.
I'm getting some responses in the chat who are saying that we are using it for PowerPoints, research, analysis, predicting models, also to grasp the concepts in a short description, identifying resources. So there are people who have been using AI in my thesis as my supervisor. I like that. So
next we have Dr. Wasim. Dr. Wasim is unmute.
Dr. Wasim would like to say something. Munawar Hamid, please unmute.
Hello, am I audible?
Wasim, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. I don't know. I have not myself been into AI much, but I think my students are more alert on that.
Yeah.
And they are getting great help, actually, positively. And I sometimes think that teachers need to run the race and cope with the situation. So it's a helpful tool overall. But yeah, the dangers apart. Yeah, that is what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah, but students are more savvy and are using it more, and the faculty are not aware.
Yes. I think it's a generational thing. For me, at least, I see it that way.
Yeah. Come on, Wasim. Don't say that. Okay, Munawar, over to you.
Okay.
Ji Munawar.
Ji, assalamu alaikum. Ji, assalamu alaikum, and very good afternoon. Can you please turn on my camera as well?
Yeah, we can see.
We can see you.
You are on.
Okay, fine. Thank you so very much. I'm from Keet University here, from Karachi, Pakistan. And I'm an educator in accounting and finance, and I have been teaching accounting for the last more than 30 years. My question is this, that how can I accommodate application of AI when I'm teaching my accounting students in respect to teaching them financial statements? This is my question, please.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's for you, Ali.
Yeah. So let me just kind of, like, briefly answer this. So we are actually, like, ourselves, like, my team is working on a tool, like, where, we have this business management system, and, how can we kind of, use generative AI to kind of present the findings or interesting insights using, like, generative AI based on the data that we have. So, like, AI can, so if you give AI, like, models, I'll try to keep it, like, quite high level. If you give AI models access to all the data that you have, the financial data, right, in the database, it can be any database, SQL database, NoSQL database, the AI system would actually start extracting insights from you. And then you can ask, for example, what was my net profit from like, January 2024 to like, March 2024. You can ask any questions like, what were, by how much did my liabilities increase like in the past 12 months, right? Like just communicate with it in natural language processing, and it will give you like, correct answers. There is a very interesting tool called Julius AI, which is actually very popular. And they are doing this, like, so they started as a tool for data scientists, but, they can analyze the entire spreadsheet. So you upload your data set, like, your spreadsheet to it, and then you just start conversing with it. Like, you can ask it to kind of, generate insights, generate graphs, provide you insights, like ask any question, and it will give you answers like from that particular spreadsheet. So like, that's like one way in which you can utilize generative AI for this purpose.
May I say something? This talk is about our challenges and concerns. I do see questions from Amir Chuktai about statistical analysis. Are we able to do it? That was a question for our section on tools, and perhaps it would have been better addressed over there. You know what I would suggest, Amir? Just put it in Gemini and ask, and it will give you an answer if it can do regression analysis. And that's the smart way to go, rather than ask me or anybody as a human being. So AI is pretty capable of giving answers about its own capability. And I do see that many of you saying there's multiple uses. And so I've used AI in class and assignments. NG from American University of Central Asia. She says that, and that's in Bishkek, Ali, if you perhaps know. And she has said that I use it a lot in the class, how biased it is. That's how she uses AI with her students to show the bias. And answers they give are over 40% wrong. And that's remarkable, to know wrong. And in majority of cases, asked her, and she said it more directly than you did, Ali, the answers are Western-centric. And that's so true. The biases in the algorithms was about a certain race type. And that was a big no-no. So yes, all right on all counts. So we can proceed.
So like, in one sentence, like, you can do statistical analysis with these as well. Just like, upload your data, ask it a question, and they will kind of, generate. So there are specific tools like Julius AI and others like with which you can do statistical analysis as well. And, like just one comment on this, like, last point, Roxana, that you mentioned about like, the Western-centric answers that we get. The reason is that, these tools are trained on the data using from the internet, right? So it is basically a snapshot of the internet. And internet is very widely used mostly in the West, right? The language in which these models are trained is English, right? So they have these inherent limitations, which is like, an excellent example of why we need to be cautious when we are using these tools. Because many times we might not even realize what the limitations of these tools are and how they are actually affecting our thinking. Right. So I have like, some examples over here as well. Like, you can use these like these tools for literature search, right? Finding relevant literature. There are tools like Elicit Consensus, like, which came into being like, a few years ago. And they can provide you summaries of the papers. They can accelerate your reading skills, like, so they can give you like exact answers from the entire PDF of 50 pages, like, whatever information you're looking for, rather than you kind of, going through every page and every paragraph. They can generate entire literature reviews, like, with correct citations now, right? So they can kind of cite papers and they will generate a literature review for you. For those of us like, who write publications, we know that, literature reviews take a good amount of our time, right? Which is not like, direct contribution to the research. We are just setting the stage. So if, AI can kind of automate that in like, the way we want, that would be awesome. And AI is already doing it. Like the tool we have built kind of, does it really well as well. Then, writing essays, reports, research papers, right? AI is being very widely used for this, like, AI-powered writing. This was there, like, even 3-4 years ago, even before ChatGPT came into being. Tools like WordTune were there, like that would help you in improving the tone of your writing, right? Change the tone of your writing. They would kind of, extend your writing, summarize it, like, if there is something which is being, when we talk about increasing accessibility, if there is something, which is like in these like difficult English words, you can ask AI to explain that to you, and it will do a really good job, right? Leave alone translation that you can do, right? Then paper insights, like, like for example, you can upload a PDF with an academic paper, and it will tell you what is the methodology used in the paper. It will give you a summary of the findings. It will give you a summary of the literature review within the paper. So, like it really helps you save a lot of time. And like, accessibility is a very important aspect of this too. right? You cannot just ask AI to explain like, different pieces of content to you. You can even ask it to kind of, translate it, right? And this GPT-4o, like the Omni model, which OpenAI released recently, that model is actually the tokenization of that model. Without going into too many details, the tokenization of this model is actually like, fine-tuned for Urdu language as well. So it would perform considerably better for Urdu, like compared to older models that they have. Right. So translation is a very important aspect of this as well, right? You can ask it to spin something in Urdu, right? And it will actually do that. Voice, like if you kind of struggle to read, you get fatigued, like looking at like the screen or looking at the paper for a long period of time. You can ask it to kind of like just put on the headphones, and like a podcast, you can do your work and start listening to an academic paper, start listening to a book, like a podcast explanation notes, like as I've mentioned. So these are like all these some great uses of AI, like which would help us save time. It would increase our productivity, and it will enable us to spend our time in those things that really matter, like providing personalized learning to our students, like spending time with the students, and which is like like a very, very important aspect.
If I may interject, Ali,
Yeah.
I think a very good point has been made by Dr. Meher Ali Malik from Nust University, Islamabad, that I've used AI to generate very specific codes. It makes mistakes at first, but you can have a discussion with AI and it corrects itself. And I have obtained correct codes in just a few revisions. And that's a remarkable capability for AI to keep improving with the prompts you give and the information you give. So in some ways, prompts is the key. And we'll have a session on that tomorrow. So please don't ask questions about effective prompting. So we will continue with that. Gee, thank you.
So I think I completely agree. That's a great point. Like prompt engineering is a new field that has come into existence after ChatGPT. Like talking to these models and getting the insights that we need is also an art. Right? It's also a skill by itself. Right. So if your student is producing really good results using ChatGPT, they've learned that skill. You should kind of credit them for that. Like they're getting the right answers from it. Like not everyone can do it. Like that prompt engineering is kind of a field on its own. And like you can use a smaller model, a cheaper model to get better answers compared to a bigger and more expensive model if you can set in the right prompts. Right. And like there is a whole area of research around this, like these agents, AI agents that are being built. Like we are working on some agents as well, like that can produce, like, can pick these like small models, right? And they can produce much better results than these huge models which have been trained using tens of millions of dollars, right? So that's like a great point. You might have to put in some effort to get the best out of these AI systems, right? But for that, you need to have this critical insight, right? You need to kind of firstly have the skill to analyze the results and see like whether they make sense or not, right? So you need to have that kind of critical analysis in place. Now, like limitations of these generative AI foundation models. And by that, I mean like models like Gemini, models like Anthropic's Claude, models like OpenAI's GPT-4, ChatGPT, like, these models can produce like magical stuff, right? They can write poetry for you in Shakespeare style, right? They can do anything that you want them to do. But like these models have some inherent limitations, right? And one of those limitations is the bias in these models, as someone has already pointed out, right? That these models are trained on a certain data set. And as I said in the beginning, like, there is no perfect data set, hence there is no perfect AI system. They are bound to have like these limitations. If you think everything that AI is saying is really good, I would say like, you would need to put in the critical hat on, because there is a good chance that sometimes AI would make mistakes, right? It would kind of produce stuff which would not make much sense, right? And this bias in AI systems is very, very common. So I'll share like, a couple of examples over here. Over here, like, when we use AI to actually generate images on the left, you can see like when you ask like, a simple model like Stable Diffusion, which is being very widely used to give a picture of a poor person from diverse cultures. If you see like all the pictures that it has produced are from a certain location belonging to a certain group of people, right? As if like there are no white poor people. Then if you ask it to specifically produce a picture of a poor white person, you can see again it's people of color, but they have this light on them, which kind of gives them that complexion, right? Then if you ask it like, to produce an image of like, an African man, like, with a fancy house, you can see like what a fancy house in Africa looks like. right? And if you ask it to kind of produce an image of a wealthy man, you can see like that wealthy man in Africa is basically wearing a suit, right? Like, pent coat, which like is not a dress in African culture, right? So you can see like how this Western stigma is being kind of, like enforced into the model. It was not intentional, right? Like, the people who built it, they didn't do it like intentionally. But the problem is like, the kind of data that they trained it on, and the rush, in this rush to kind of, get it to the market and raise like, hundreds of millions of dollars. These companies kind of, just launch these tools like this. And these tools have like, some inherent limitations. You can see the stigma that this particular model has. Then on the right, it shows you like another model, and if you ask the model to kind of produce the images of like people who are in jail, like, inmates. So these are the images that it produces, like, not a single white person who is in jail, like, in the US. And so you can see like, how these models are actually enforcing like, in a way, like Western values, and what kind of bias they have. Similarly, like, there was this another like research paper from that I like, went through a few months ago, which kind of focused on like, which asked the model to produce the images of like, successful women, right? And all the women that it produced, like, they had a certain dressing, they were white, right? They were from the Western culture, right? Like, so like there's this stigma in these models that we need to actually kind of, address. Right, this is like just one example, and this happens like, when we are kind of conversing with these models as well, like, in the chat models too, right? When we kind of, ask them to present something or present their views on something, like, because they're trained on the data from the web, right? They just pick anything up, and web has like a lot of lies in it, like, it has a lot of rubbish as well. But because these models are trained on that data, that bias kind of, like is kind of reinforced as an output from these models. Another very important limitation is hallucinations, right? So this is like, the term which is used in the machine learning language, in the AI language, and you will come through it like go through it many times when you are reading like literature on AI ethics. Hallucinations basically means that these models dream, they make up stuff, right? They produce like content which is not true, which does not make sense, right? They're just kind of, like daydreaming, right? Again, a very common problem in all the AI systems. And this hallucination is a problem that exists in every AI model that is out there right now. Whether you're using Gemini, whether you're using like, GPT-4, like they might release GPT-5 soon, Anthropic's Claude, as the state-of-the-art models, all of these models hallucinate. It is a very active area of research, which the researchers are trying to kind of address, but we have not been able to address it yet. There are a number of ways that we have come up with, like, retrieval augmented generation, like RAG systems, and, other ways in which we try to kind of curtail this and mitigate this limitation. But inherently, these models hallucinate. They make up stuff, right? Just to kind of, like briefly give like, some examples, right? So on the top right, like, if you see the type B, like, which is a semantic hallucination, like, right, if you ask a model like how does a car engine work, and within the response, like, it would say like, miniature unicorns harnessing stardust, right? A clear example of, it is making up stuff, like, which makes basically no sense, right? Then like have a look at this, like type D hallucination, which is a factual hallucination, right? If you ask it like, what was the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo, like a very significant battle like in European history, right? It says that it was won by British army led by Napoleon Bonaparte. Like, you can clearly see like, the factual mistakes over here, right? Napoleon was like not a British ruler, he was like, basically a French ruler, right? A decisive victory marked the end of the Napoleonic Wars and solidified France's dominance, right? Again, like making up this factual stuff. And then this can be like very dangerous. Like if you, so like, for those of you like who are students of history and, like who teach history, like over there, we can't afford to make these kind of factual mistakes, right? Because we need to make sure that what we are teaching our students is like actually true, and it is factual without any kind of propaganda and like, that kind of stuff. But over here, these models are literally kind of making up stuff, right? And this kind of is a reflection of like, these inherent limitations that these AI systems have. And you might like, some of you might have already noticed it in the submissions from your students, like, students who are using these models a lot, like, they would have like, this kind of, they would have like, this kind of content in their submissions. Then last but not the least, like, these models are like, black box models, right? We still don't know how these models work. right? We still don't know why these models produce the content they produce, right? GPT-4, like, I think it took like $400 million to train that model, that one single model, GPT-4, right? And there was like, it took like quite a few months or probably more than a year to train that model, right? But that model, we still don't, and it has like more than 100 billion parameters, like it has 1 trillion parameters, right? So a network with 1 trillion parameters, and we still don't know how this complex network produces the content that it produces. It just works. It just produces really good content, like, right? But this is like, these models are black box, right? And like I have like over here, like I've cited an article from Jeffrey Hinton, like who specifically left Google to kind of spread awareness about the risks of these AI systems because they're being very widely used, right? And as like Oksana pointed out in the beginning, like there are tens of new tools coming out literally every day built on top of these AI systems, right? And these tools are being used by hundreds of millions of people every day, right? But these tools, like, have these inherent limitations. The organizations who have built these foundation models are still trying to figure out how we can control these models, how we can kind of control the output they produce, right? These days, like there is this AI Seoul summit going on in Korea, right? And over there, like, one of the main points of discussion is actually controlling these AI systems. And Yoshua Bengio, like, who's again like one of the godfather, considered one of the godfathers of AI, and he played a very important role in the breakthroughs of natural language processing techniques, like, in 90s, where he came up with the technique for tokenization and embeddings. Like, he's warning, the person who kind of, really initiated this field is actually warning against its risks, right? Because he says that, we don't know why these models are producing the content they produce, hence we need to be very careful. And, on top of it, the problem is that with the passage of time, we can see better and bigger models are coming along, right? We will have GPT-5, we will have Claude 4, we will have Gemini 2.0 after 1.5. And these models are more complex. They are even bigger, right? So we already don't understand the foundations of previous models, which are smaller, right? And we are building even more complex systems, right? Which would be even harder to control, right? Hence, like, we need to be very careful about how we are using these systems, right? Because they have these, like, biases in them, they hallucinate, and the people who have built them also have lack of understanding of how these systems actually work, right? And like, and the reason why this might not be the priority of some of the organizations, like, OpenAI, is simply because like, they have this pressure from the investors that they want to generate revenue, and they need to release new models and bigger models and better models as soon as possible, right? For those of you like who are interested, there is this very interesting anecdote of how Anthropic, like, which is another giant in this field, came into being out of OpenAI. So Anthropic is basically founded by ex-employees of OpenAI, and the reason why they founded Anthropic was because they wanted to produce ethical AI models, right? In a sense, like, this is the reason why an entire new organization was formed, and that ended up raising, like, billions of dollars. So, like, we have seen these limitations of generative AI models. So how do these limitations impact the academia, right? Hallucination, black box, how are they going to impact, like, how are they going to impact us, right? Our students, our faculty, right? Firstly, we see use of certain terms in research papers, right? And there was this recent research from the Scientific American, right, in which they showed, like, how in scientific publications the usage of certain terms has gone significantly up, right? So I have this article in the slide, cited it, and you can see this graph over here, right? How AI-associated adjectives, which are very commonly used by AI models, have gone up. For example, you can see, like, notable has gone significantly up in 2023, right? Similarly, intricate, like, an AI-associated adjective has gone significantly up, like, in the usage of in like, scientific literature. Then when we move on to adverbs over there, like terms like, strategically, scholarly, they have gone, like, strategically up. And, terms like meticulously, like, which normally humans wouldn't use very often, right? But because these models are using these terms, so these terms appear a lot more often, like, in the scientific publications. There is nothing wrong with it, like, but it is an indication for us, like, as reviewers, like, when we review academic publications, like, we can see, okay, so this means that they have probably used an AI model, right? Or they've used, like, a generative AI model to kind of, help with academic writing. it is fine, like, as long as there is no, like, there are no factual mistakes, but these mistakes can get much worse. And I'll show you how, right? It happens when we blindly end up using these tools for scientific publications. And this has actually happened, right? So here are two examples of papers that got published in Elsevier, like, which is like a pretty prestigious publication, right? They have peer-reviewed articles. And over here for the article on the left, which I have edited, like, link, they have removed this article now because there was this whole uproar on social media, like, about how these researchers kind of, published an article using AI, and they didn't even edit it. Like, they literally just input the stuff that they got, like, from the model, right? For example, in the like, as a first, like, abstract, they have in summary the management of bilateral estrogenic. I'm very sorry, but I don't have access to real-time information or patient-specific data, as I'm an AI language model. This was literally in the abstract of like, a paper that got published in a peer-reviewed scientific publication, right? So these kind of, like, blatant mistakes need to be kind of addressed, and we need to be careful as faculty members, as educators, right? And then on the right, this publication is, by the way, still up, right? They still haven't removed. The left one has been removed, but the right one is still up. Over here, like, you can see in the introduction, they have certainly, here is a possible introduction for your topic, which is basically the way a large language models answer, right? So, this thing is actually penetrating the academia, right? So we need to kind of, this is where our role comes into play. We should be using AI to augment our intelligence, not replace it. We shouldn't be blindly relying on AI systems. I know, like, we have time constraints, and, like, we have all these limitations that we are working against, and we have million other commitments. But, like, being true to our profession, we need to be careful that, when we are using these tools, these tools are acting as, like, this assistants only, right? So we keep checks and balances on our assistants, right? We make sure that, they work in a certain manner. It's same with these AI tools. And always remember, if there is a conflict between what you think and what AI is saying, 99% of the time you will be right, and you should always trust and believe in your own judgment. These models, like, go with your own judgment rather than on the AI system, because with your own judgment, you can justify. You can say, like, why did you kind of, come up with this? So this is, like, another example of AI basically penetrating into the academia. Now, like, what can we do, right? What plan of actions do we have, like, for academics? What can we do to kind of, address these limitations? So AI should be augmenting, like, your intelligence. You can use these tools to become a better teacher, right? You can use these tools to become a better researcher, right? You can use these tools for learning, right? And, we are living in a world, like, even if you've done a PhD, like, you might be a master in the field for a good 6-8 months, but not more than that. This is how rapidly these fields are moving forward these days. There is this continuous learning. And in our students as well, like, one of the most important skills that we can teach them is lifelong learning, that their learning would not stop, like, when they are, even after their education finishes, right? Even after PhD, your learning does not stop. After masters, after bachelors, your learning would not stop. You would have to continue to learn, irrespective of which job you're working, right? We can see, like, we have, like, these people, like, there has been this mention of, like, generational change. Yes, there is a generation change, but this generation change will be there forever now. When I am, like, in my 50s and 60s, for me, it will be like, world will be like 10 times more different than what you are experiencing today, right? So I have to develop the skill of lifelong learning, where I pick these tools up quickly. Like, I kind of, make sure that, I am, like, in a way, like, partly tech savvy enough to pick these tools, but at the same time, I understand how these tools work, and I can kind of critically evaluate these tools, right? And you need to kind of, use these tools to improve your productivity, to increase your time. But for this, like, you need to be careful that these tools are only playing a subordinate role. They're not replacing you, right? Even if you ask AI to generate a literature review with correct citations, it will generate it for you, right? It might have all the correct citations in it as well, but it is still your responsibility to double check, to make sure that it is correct, right? And if it is not giving the results you want, then you can kind of, do all that prompt engineering and try to get the better results out of it, right? So it should kind of, you can benefit from these tools, but you need to make sure that you use them in a certain manner, right? And you are the one who is in control. As a human, like, we are the ones who should always be in control, no matter how good these AI systems get, right? If I'm, like, the one who is teaching, and I am the one who is asking ChatGPT something, it might be, million times smarter than me, or it might be able to produce 10 times better English content than my English language skills. But still, I'm the one in charge. I'm the one who decides like what to use and what not to use and how to use the model. Right. And most importantly, like, you need to teach these students how to use these tools in a productive manner. Like, so not just that we are using it ourselves, but we are also teaching our students like how to use these tools to save them time. Right. As like, we mentioned at the beginning, AI is here. Like, we have to kind of embrace it. There was a lot of talk in these, like, UCL and these universities over here in UK to ban these tools. But then they realized, like, they can't really ban them. They can't prevent anyone from using the free version of ChatGPT. Right. The only thing they can do is like, and they can kind of, provide the guidelines on how they expect students to use these AI tools. Right. So we need to make sure that we are actually abiding by these guidelines. Then, there's this tool like, that we have built called ResearchPal. Do feel free to try it out, right? It kind of, would help you with academic writing. It would help you with going through the papers, reading the papers, managing your library, like integrate with your Zotero and Mendeley accounts, bring your literature in, ask questions. Hopefully it will save you time. It will help you become better at research, so you can just focus on your methodology, your data analysis, your findings. Right, and it will do all the the admin work for you, and you can use this code to get 50% discount on the pro plan. You can test it out for free, so you will be able to use it for free, like initially. Then, briefly, just I have this one slide on the transparency in this framework, and I've added this link to the paper, which you can access for free as well. So these AI systems, especially these generative AI models, they are not very transparent. They have these inherent limitations. These are black box models. But when we talk about transparency, you should know the burden of transparency lies on the organization who has built it. So if you as an educator do not understand how a particular model works, it is not on you. It is the organization that has actually built it. They have to make sure that the tool that they have built is explainable, right? It is fair, it does not discriminate, right? It is accountable. There is someone who is responsible for it. So if the AI tool goes wrong, right, where organizations have literally lost billions of dollars in valuation simply because their AI systems weren't good enough, right? Who is accountable for it? Is anyone going to resign? Who will we hold accountable? And these tools are interpretable. We know how and why they're producing the results they're producing, and they are safe to use. Right? If kids are using it, if our learners are using it, in their O levels, in their metric exams, how do we make sure that they're using it safely? Right? It is in a way our responsibility to ensure that. Coming to an end, AI is in early 2000, in late 90s, it's an internet wave. Right? It is coming. We can't kind of stop it. Right? We can't stop students from using it. The only thing we can do is we can kind of embrace it, but we can kind of tailor it. We can, in a way, provide the guidelines to our students, tell them how to use these tools in a productive manner, how not to misuse these tools, how not to be kind of, to exploit these tools, right? It has severe limitations, some of which I've discussed. I've given examples as well. And we need to at least have some idea of how these limitations actually work. And yes, so thank you very much. That is it from me. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I think there was one, again, I would say there were some questions also in the chat about there are some tools to check the veracity of the AI writing. So AI writing or not, you put it through a tool like Turnitin, and Turnitin did make an effort, I think, withdrew it sometime later. So what is the status of those detection tools?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. So, these tools and OpenAI themselves actually launched a tool as well, which was called which would kind of differentiate between which would identify if the text has been produced by an AI model or whether it has been produced by a human. So you can't rely on these tools, right? These tools and even the AI tool itself, had less than 60 or 70% probability of predicting correctly if the text has been produced by an AI model. And because these models are becoming better and better over a period of time and very, very rapidly, every year we see multiple models being launched, right? So it is becoming increasingly impossible for us to differentiate between the text that has been produced by an AI model compared to that has been produced by a human. And those tools who do claim that they are doing, and there are literally research publications on this as well, that we can't differentiate the text. We can give some probability. So these tools were kind of claiming that I would say like we should take it with a pinch of salt because they can't really differentiate. And it is probably like we can use indications like I mentioned like these output from these models have certain words which can be used as indicators like this might be produced by ChatGPT. But as a faculty member, when we want to kind of provide the guidelines to our students regarding how to use these tools, the reason why we can't kind of ban them, the reason why we can't use these kind of tools to differentiate between, to kind of evaluate the submissions from students, is because there can be many false positives as well, right? So there is a chance that there is a student who used ChatGPT in a very clever manner and it was able to dodge the system. But what happens if there is a student who did not use ChatGPT, but our tool said it has used ChatGPT? These false positives can be very, very unfair. Right? What would we do in that case? That is why these tools like are not practical to use.
Yeah, that's right. So at the end of the day, I saw a comment by Mavish. It said it comes down to the critical thinking of the human mind. And I think that's what the message is all along. When you see the literature, they're talking about how creativity and critical thinking is what still gives the human. And I say still because with the affective element domain coming into the AI, where they are able to detect emotions and are also going to respond with emotions to your voice or to your body language, this is becoming, very quickly more human-like responses where things will start to get a bit, I do not know, Ali. You see that cyborg theory, and I was thinking if really it will become a reality at some point where the human and the machine will be indistinguishable from each other, and you don't know where the human starts and the machine ends. And so we always thought that these were fantasy, but then with time, many fantasies have come to reality. But you also alert us very strongly to the point that there is a lot of understanding we have yet to develop, that there's a lot of regulation we have to put up in our systems, in our classrooms, and that we have all to be on the same page. You see, so many of us in a classroom, for example, even if you take a classroom, all those 30 of you, starting from the teacher to the student, are on a different levels of understanding regarding AI. Now, within that scope and use of AI and how they are able to do it, I think the first thing that we will have to do is develop some sort of basic understanding. I mean, expertise by the IT guy will be different. The user will be different. The teacher will be a researcher. So how do you start with the baseline information that all should have to have a decent conversation among each other of what to do in case of so? So I think that is our biggest challenge right now, where we see we are not as comfortable with the knowledge. You talked about complex algorithms, you talked about ethical dilemmas. Most of all, I think as scholars, our dilemma is, now that you're using it, the least you can do is cite it. And so there are those issues where you're saying, how do you acknowledge the legality of AI use in your documents? And then, of course, this raises many other concerns which are generic to all technology, like you said, transparency issues, regulatory issues. But one thing that also stands out, that it, despite the openness about it, like I said, the paid versions bring about again an increase in, one is increase in inequity because of lack of knowledge or better understanding of AI. And then the other comes with the paid versions or the environment where you are, where there is discussions happening about and discourses on AI use. And I think we haven't reached that stage. We are trying to reach that stage where we evolve our own understanding on our campus of what it should be. We're in the process of developing regulatory guidelines. And funnily enough, those guidelines are not in place, but the faculty and students are merrily working away with AI. But then, while you were talking, I was reading through some material for your talk, I came out and like we had this discussion, that AI is basically, and somebody wrote it also, I think Angie in one of the chats, that it is more like done for enterprises, corporations, businesses. It is not yet an AI that is specifically thinking about education. There are, Khan Academy, there are some, which are doing a very targeted market towards like School Magic AI and some others, very targeted towards education, but that's still not happening as much. Then, like I said, issue of overcrowding of technology. We pick up one and we don't know if this will go obsolete within the next few days, actually. That's so fast. And then, of course, the security. I mean, how do you make your system secure? I have noticed that initially when I started using Gemini, I was placing my name and my institution's name into the text till I realized that was a breach of confidentiality in a very large scale. And those are things that perhaps we need to be very alert to, that how do you keep your data secure? One thing that shocked me about AI was that it's a threat to climate change. And I was really surprised that the amount of water it uses and the amount of heat and carbon dioxide it produces. And with the way we are talking about holding the climate where it is, with the rising temperature and melting glaciers, I think we are now stuck up with no way out of a climate that's going to become unbearable. And so among all those things, the things that we don't talk about as a challenge and a concern is the climate issue. So I think that those are some of the things I was reading. And again, the lack of expertise, potential of misuse, you talked about it. And like, I think, how do you build a culture of trust where we are not sure, is it human or is it machine? And I think that is going to be a challenge despite for our critical thinking. I look forward, we have lots of time to questions in the chat and any other comments. We are happy to unmute you if you would like to talk. So I see more thanks, but I do see Aruj Iqbal. I feel like from Air University, instead of pointing out AI detection and plagiarism, we as instructors should focus on assigning tasks which foster creativity and thinking instead of summaries. And absolutely, you got it right. And I think that's what we have been also talking about. We have a lecture, we'll definitely share. Is there any other comment? Thank you, thanks, Ali. Nice talk. Then Arsha Mir says, students are using AI to produce academic. This is very informative session for all who to know how to use smartly. Yeah, that's a good point. You actually get an edge if you use AI tools smartly. That's the other inequity in there. If you're not smart enough, you get bogged down. Climate change is challenging, yes. Insightful session. AI is working on data put in by humans, absolutely. And humans have lots of limitations. And I don't see any other comments or hands up. Yeah. Dell. What is Dell? I would like to know who this computer is. Is it a human being on the other side? Please unvideo and unmute and do talk. You have your hand up?
The listers, I guess. I've unmuted the person. They'll talk.
Yeah, Dell, can you say what you have to say? And please tell us if you're human. Okay. Yes. So what is it you wanted to ask? You are still not unmute. Unmute yourself, please.
Now, am I audible to you?
Say that.
Am I audible to you right now?
Yes, a bit more. Yeah, you are. You could speak a bit more loudly if you don't mind.
Assalamu alaikum to all. I actually sorry I couldn't change the name. I just came after attending the class.
Okay.
My name is Neelma Riaz and I'm an English lecturer in NAS. Working in
You
NAS.
are a lecturer where?
In
NAS. There you go. Okay.
So I just wanted to ask something, that is this AI going to replace the role of English teachers in the coming future?
Yeah, I don't think so, but there is quite a debate. GLE, over to you.
Yeah, like I agree, like, I don't, you know, if we say like near future, you mean like 2 to 3 years? I don't think so. It would, like, it wouldn't as such replace teachers. Even though, like, if you speak to educators, like, educationists, they really hate it when we use the word replace with AI. But, coming from a tech background, I do think that, AI might at one point, like, and not by one point, I mean, like, within 20s, like, before 2030, AI might get
Smart.
better in terms of providing contextualized learning to students at scale, right? And I was like, and universities over here are already thinking about it. Like the other day, I met like the dean of King's College London, and he said like the problem with our university is, and this is like the dean, like the head, literally the principal of King's College London, and he said one of the challenges for us being based in London is that we can't provide one-on-one tutors to our students, right? The way like other universities have, like in US they have like personalized tutoring, like personalized tutors for every student, and they can kind of ask questions. And I really hope we can use AI very soon to give students access to that personalized, like learning. So it wouldn't happen probably in 2 to 3 years, but I won't be surprised if it happens in 5 to 6 years. But again, like replacing teachers is still like a strong word to use. Like I think it can provide contextualized learning where students, it will really help learners a lot. But the way a teacher understands the background of a student and the kind of learning that a teacher provides, I don't think so that would be like replaced in like in 6 7 years either. So the benefit of AI is scalability, like accessibility. Like if you have a mobile app in smartphone and you give students access to it, like in a village where you have translation services where they can speak in Urdu or in Sindhi or in Balochi, and they can converse with an AI system and get an output from ChatGPT like in their local language. That is where the real value is. Replacement might be a bit like a bit far off.
Yeah, I think that's true, but there is a genuine fear over there. Some are saying it might not hit us till 2050, so I will be done by then, hopefully. Okay.
The reason why and I like a lot of my like mentors will actually believe that as well, because they come from an education background that this would happen till 2050. I don't think so. These people would have even predicted ChatGPT moment 2 years ago, where like AI would produce content. So I think the people who are building it are like very very positive in this regard, like about how AI will actually cross like human capabilities. So I think that might happen at some point.
There's an interesting comment from Rahmat Alam. Says that can we regulate AI like we have law regulations for Homo sapiens that limits on our choices of freedom. Okay, that's a good way of putting it. Can this be replicated with AI? And to me, the answer, Ali, you will give the answer, but I thought that we have left social media unregulated for so long. Where the, I mean, how are we going to find the time to regulate AI yet? We don't even understand its capabilities. So Facebook and all the media giants are, running from court to court, and there's no verdict out there. Anything to add, Adi?
Yeah, so I think like regulation of AI, I think it should definitely come into play. But the problem is that, there's this debate between proprietary models and open source models. This is where regulation comes into play. And, when OpenAI at one point was really advocating for like, regulations, and, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and, these big people were meeting like, the leaders in Washington, kind of pushing for regulations. The term that was being used by like, people who were advocating for open source is regulatory capture, right? If you regulate AI at this point, it means that it might actually benefit some organizations who have already built these really big systems. And it would prevent anyone else from coming at par with it.
Okay.
It is just like, the analogy which they normally use for this is actually nuclear bombs, right? So the countries who built it themselves first, they tried their best to kind of not share this tech with anyone else, not let anyone else build it. And that it is like, and these like AI, like, who are like leaders, they believe that this can be a much bigger threat. AI can be a much bigger threat in one way, like, than the nuclear weapon. It can also be a much more powerful weapon for countries than the like, nuclear weapons. So I think it can definitely be regulated, but it would be regulated on the organization side, not on the usage side. Like, for example, what kind of tools can organizations build? What kind of checks they can be used? For example, in UK, the government actually released an evaluation framework, which the companies can use to evaluate their models. So, for example, they can regulate that. They can say, like, they can make it binding on every organization who's releasing a large language model to go through that evaluation and score a certain metric. Like, get, for example, 95% accuracy. Right, we might see something like that, but that is, I would say, like still very early stages.
I do see that lots of governments have actually made AI guidelines, and so in our resources, I found something that was really comprehensive was the EU guidelines for the use of AI, and that might give good ideas, and we'll share it with. Aruj Iqbal, why does everything have to be versus everybody? There are ways of looking. It's like half full or half empty. Why not with AI, with teachers, with students, and so on and so forth? And I think there is no other way to look at this debate. NCBIS, I'm sorry if I pronounce your mispronounce, Felestas Obendo. I think it is more of AI and the teacher and the let us look at it as an assistant and a support. I totally agree. There's a very, very good video on this topic as shared above. Yes, thank you. AI, Habib University, Noor, most of the tools are associated with cost. Absolutely. Mostly a very high cost, actually, mostly in dollars. And so equity and affordable, even in education, remains a formidable challenge. Definitely, that's a very strong concern. The most persistent, and that's something I don't understand. Please tell me, the most persistent myth by Veritasium, is that Latin? And what does that mean? It has something to do with veracity, if that's a Latin word, but I can't go very far. So would you try to clarify what you're trying to say, Sadaf? No reply? Okay. We'll move on to Punjab University, Hifsa. Arshadji asks you, Dr. Ali, can you please elaborate how can bias be detected and mitigated in AI tools?
Yeah, so there are two categories of AI tools, right? In my talk in the first half, when I was mentioning the misuse of AI, or the malfunctioning of AI in like educational context over here in UK for the A-level grades, that is what we usually call traditional AI systems. In traditional AI systems, you can detect bias by using certain open source frameworks like Fairness 360. You can use Lime for explanations, and it would give you like a distribution of what kind of data is present. So, for example, if you're training a model which has 95% representation or 99% representation, and I've literally built AI tools with data over here, for organizations in London, where there was 98% representation was from just males, right? And only 2% female data was present. Now that means that tool will be biased in favor of males, right? And it was a recruitment tool. So you can see how that translates then into kind of recruitment practices. So in these traditional AI systems, that is how you can kind of detect bias using these open access libraries and seeing what kind of data you have, what are the limitations of the data, which groups are overrepresented, which groups are underrepresented. In US legislation, they use the term sensitive variables for this, which includes racism, a race of a person, their religion, their nationality, their age, their gender. These are sensitive variables which you can use to analyze the data, but you can't use these as features in the model when you're training the data. Now coming to generative AI, that's a very kind of a different kind of a ball game, and that is why it's quite tricky as well, and it's quite risky because it is really difficult to detect bias in these systems. The only way you can do it, and researchers have published a lot of research in these, where they're just kind of prompting these systems, getting some output from it, and analyzing that output and seeing so this system is biased like this system is biased like this. It can't be that you can, for example, use a tool, because we don't have access to these systems, right? We just have access to we just have access to we can talk to these systems, but we don't know how they are built. We don't have access to the code. We don't have access to their weights. So we can't as such detect bias by applying a tool or by analyzing how the system is being built. the only thing we can do is just prompt it, see what kind of output we are getting, and then critically evaluating it. And researchers have published a lot of research on this, and one of the ways that that you can stay up to date with this is just following what is going on in the AI domain, following some of the researchers who are working on AI ethics, especially for these large language models. For example, there is a very active group at New York University led by Sam Bauman, who's doing great work on this. There is Anthropic publishes a lot of work on this as well. Their papers, although are a bit technical, right? But they have recently published a very, very fascinating paper on the interpretability of large language models, why, and which is kind of scratching the surface on why these systems produce the results they produce. So as coming in short, the only way we can detect bias in these systems is by prompting them, by seeing what others have found out and what the limitations of these systems might be.
There was an interesting question also. I think it was a clarification regarding regulations by Remel, that my question was on the laws created and enforced by AI on AI. And I think that's happening as well. I see OpenAI, ChatGPT, and others trying to, very mildly try to say that we make sure not to do this or not to do that. I wouldn't call them regulations on AI, but they're trying to chart and openly display their limitations, to the public. So in a way, they are saying that you have to be careful. But we are alerting you to our limitations. Noor, you had some question, I think a comment that there is a very good information somewhere, and thank you for sharing it we'll share it with the rest as well. Amir Chubtai talks about too much dependence on AI can have an adverse impact on individuals' creativity. Absolutely, if you start relying on something, then anything can become you talked about views of Tristan Harris. I haven't heard of him, but thank you. And there's a YouTube and how he emphasizes using technologies with his wisdom. Absolutely, I think we should watch that. Very, very useful session. Thank you for a qualitative session. The sample used to illustrate the discussions were amazing. So thank you very much. So can AI be used for future predictions? Yes, why not? Ali, over to you. Because let's see what the fortune holds for us. Ji.
Yes, AI is being very commonly used. This is actually, it has been very commonly used for future predictions. For example, stock prices, algorithms are being used since early 2000s. And this is one of the early use cases. So for example, some of the projects that I worked on, when we built a recruitment tool which predicted, when an applicant applies for a job, the tool basically predicted whether this particular applicant, in the context of financial services, whether this person will be a good investment banker or not, right? And based on certain indications and all that, we kind of made that prediction about a particular person. In education, there are tools which predict a learner's grade, right? How might this learner particularly score in the final exam. But all these systems do have their inherent limitations. There are systems which also predict, AI is being very commonly used in weather predictions, what the weather is going to look like. In climate change, it is being used predicting the I know some projects going on at UCL where they are trying to kind of working with Red Cross, and they're trying to kind of predict any natural disasters that might occur, floods, earthquakes, in different geographic regions around the globe. So there are one of the early use cases, earliest adoptions of AI in the industry were actually basically based on these predictions, right? These simple video streaming tools Netflix, Amazon, they use these prediction models. They make a prediction that if I watch this movie, I will basically watch this movie X as well, Y as well, Z as well, and they will provide me that prediction. Based on that prediction, they will provide me a recommendation. So one of the, I would say fundamental use cases of AI would be kind of to make some form of prediction about the future.
Yeah. at the end of the day, it all boils down to some formula that you use to calculate, forecasting or something. It won't tell you what's going to happen to you in the next 2 days unless you give complete bio of your health, your activities, and what you do, so it can calculate your risk assessments and so on and give you some sort of a prediction. But, anything is possible. Remember they say that you have more chance of, dying in a road accident than dying of I don't know what. And they have those predictions which tell something about your habits. And there are surveys that tell you if you do this, or so on and so forth, your health, your diet, your lifestyle, what would be the tentative range of your lifespan. So, yes, predictions are fun, but of course, you don't take them absolutely verbatim to the last degree. I am very excited with the comment by Muhammad Hasnan Heather. He said, exquisite meeting. Now, I really don't know what that means. So, but it's a good comment. I'll take it as a great compliment for our session. Thanks and regards, and use AI for your benefits and its potential. Yes. Sadaf, Kinnaird College, quite informative. Thank you. Thank you so much for an interesting session. Mavish, AI sometimes denies to assist by saying not enough information on a particular topic. Does that mean that predictions can be made only on very generic topics that hold the large data set from a diverse geographic context? Right, Ali?
No, I think it's the opposite. Predictions would be made on very specific topics. Generic predictions, would be very risky, and the chances of errors would be much higher. So, for example, for a stock price, you can predict what the stock price is going to be, and the data that you can use needs to be very specific to that particular stock, right? If you want to kind of make a prediction about a candidate, like when I say whether a candidate is going to be a good investment banker, now that categorization of goodness in terms of being in the profession of investment banking is being defined using certain metrics, right? So what we are really making a prediction about is how, for example, when this person if this person joins, how much profit are they going to make? How much costs are they going to incur? How much, there are some other metrics hard stops and these kind of things, how would they perform across all these different metrics? So the more specific your task is when you want to build an AI system, the better it is. For specific tasks, AI systems tend to work much better compared to generic tasks, which can be very risky, because this also means that there needs to be a lot of diversity in the data.
I don't see any other questions, but I see a lot of certified audience. And I know that our faculty go on to classes after 2 p.m. 1 to 2 is their break when they are not teaching. And so a lot of our faculty must have left, but we still have run 90 with us. And that's all due to Ali, your great session and information. And I thought you put in very good examples. Just to let you know that we are sharing. Gohar, will you please put on the resource site? We are leaving you with we will also post you Ali's PowerPoint and the video. And we are sharing with you an interesting comment. I'm going to say it, Islamia University, Bahawalpur, Zara. Excessive use of AI is going to man lazy, not only in physical activities, but also man will be of a lethargic mentality. Don't be so. I think AI will jog you to try to compete with it. At least that's what's happening with me. And I'm saying, I can still be better than AI, so I have to try harder. So it just make me actually more alert to many things rather than lethargic. But yes, for many repetitive tasks, I'm very happy to hand them over to AI because they are quite boring to do again and again and again, like writing emails, giving it a context. Even, frankly speaking, the program, when I made the program, I had some things in my mind and I did that for each session and I said, put it in a professional academic language. And I think that turned out great, except for a few changes. It did well. So we are leaving you Mehran Jamshoro, I'm so happy to see you, Mohammad Burhan. I think greatly appreciate the efforts made to organize such an informative session. Learned a lot. Thank you so much. It's a delight to offer open access with such remarkable experts. We didn't want to, so hold them to ourselves, and we thought we should share. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity for all of us. I hope there will be more. So the resources we leave for you are EU's ethical guidelines. I think it is really because it targets teaching and learning for educators. There is a very interesting website, Ditch the Textbook. And I have noticed that repeatedly it comes up with very good, learning and teaching resources and blogs. And I really like, they have a diagram, what is cheating, what is not. And in an age where we are struggling with trying to decide how much AI is okay or not okay, and we make that decision, it gives you 10 scales in a diagram from human to totally AI. And the issue is that we have to be our own regulators at the institutional level or whatever level to decide how much we are going to find okay for us. So how much AI is okay and what is not okay. And I think at the end of the day in academic integrity, it's not a matter of AI bringing about cheating. I think with cheating, the problem is it's the values and the student that will cheat. If they are used to cheating or anybody used to cheating and has integrity issues, I am blatantly going to say that that person will find a way. It's not AI's fault. It's like saying AI is, no, the fault is on us as individuals if we are not able to regulate ourselves. And we have a brief, I think. Ali, I do not know, how did you find a brief that we put up for ethics and AI encouraging responsible use?
I think it was quite useful. Yeah.
Did you think there was something missing in that we could make it more comprehensive?
I think
your
it was
transparency framework. I'll put in your transparency framework in there. That will spruce it up. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. We still have 167. And it was a great session, Ali. Loved having you with us. And thank you so much for finding time. And when you come to Lahore, love to meet up with you and take it on from there, because we also have a research methodology course coming up starting June 3. So from June 3 to end of July, we have 20 sessions scheduled on research methodology, and there are at least 7 to 8 foreign experts on that session, including you, Ali. And I was thinking of being kind to you and taking you away from one session instead of giving you 2. I think we'll stick with you for academic integrity, and I'll try to see if another person is ready. If we can't find another one, I'll come back to you, right? But I thought I was really making you work too much. And so kind of you for doing it pro bono. That helps us a lot in reducing the inequity with the knowledge haves and knowledge have nots. So thank you so much. God bless.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye. Bye.